Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Property Hustle Show. My name is Andrew, and today Ping and I are joined by a very special guest, James Maggs, who is a real estate investor. He is also a real estate investment coach and a longtime realtor. Super experienced, and he has a lot of great information to share. So, James, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Being a realtor is obviously a very competitive industry. There's a lot of realtors out there, and how many do we know that are not able to make a living out of it? How many do we know that there's a teaching that is sometimes a little bit archaic? Like, people still come in as new realtors saying, okay, if I'm going to work with you, I need you to commit to me and I need you to sign something. But now, because being a realtor is so competitive, it's a very value-driven service now, yeah. Right? So when you're offering some kind of value, a lot of investors go into it with the mindset of like, if you give me value, I should want to stay with you. It shouldn't just be because we signed a contract together. Right. What is your approach towards this value-driven service?
Well, it's a relationship-based service too, right? So you got to look at it as a long-term relationship, right? So there's so many realtors that will look at it transactionally, right? I just need to get from A to B. I need to get this guy the keys or to the house, and then they're gone, and they don't provide any before service or after close service. So we've always treated it differently. Like, number one, I want a long-term relationship with them, not only because it's a relationship. Like, there's people that I love my clients, right? We actually hang out outside of the real estate business, whether it's at meetups or whatever else, but also understanding that this is a long-term game too, right? So by nurturing those relationships and making sure that we provide value all the way along the way, then you've got clients for life, right? And those clients will refer you to other investors and other clients for a different business, right? So you just got to look at it strategically. But I've been on the other side where I've saved a client who's come from a cost-based realtor, where they signed up with somebody because it was cheap, right? And they went in thinking that was the right service, listed their house, didn't sell. And so then they came through me from a referral when they had expressed some concern and like, why isn't my house selling? And I went through the list of kind of all these questions. Did your realtor do this? Did your realtor do that? Did they do this? And none of the things that we normally would have recommended be done were done. And then I'm like, well, what's your contract, your relationship base? And it's like, oh, it's a flat fee service, and there was nothing else, no frills, right? And so they got what they paid for, right? In the end, they didn't have to pay them because the house didn't sell. I was able to take over the listing, and we ended up getting it sold for the price that she wanted in the time frame that she wanted. So it's just understanding that those decisions based on cost versus what value does your realtor bring to the table, and what is their expertise can be make the biggest difference.
I think that is really important, because a lot of people, when they're thinking about, I need to pay for a certain service, right? If you're trying to look for the cheaper service, your service is going to be discounted because there's no financial resource to provide a complete service for exactly what you need. Yep. Especially for investors, right? Because investors, the expertise in analyzing all the numbers in deals or deal finding, those all came to this all came with a lot of experiences from a realtor in order for you to actually find a good deal. Yeah. So that's why we always emphasize, don't try to squeeze your people. Yeah. Right. The best deal is where everybody makes money, including yourself as a real estate
It needs to
agent.
be a win-win.
Yeah. You see, there is such a thing as the intelligent consumer. So the consumer has to be intelligent themselves. And sometimes when they just look for the cheapest price, they're not always being the most intelligent consumer, not understanding that people should be treating their realtors, in truth, both ways. Realtors should be treating their clients, and clients should be treating their realtors as long-term partners. And you don't want to be squeezing your partners. Yeah. You need to be making sure that you pay people what they need and give more, if anything. Don't give less and then make it cheaper, because you're not doing anybody any favors long-term. Yeah. So the people definitely need to understand that. But a lot of realtors come out, and how does somebody really start to understand, where can I as a realtor give value to my client that is beyond anything else? Or how do I compete, let's say, with somebody like you, if I wanted to come in, who knows how to give value?
Yeah, well, we've always looked at the business as there's enough business to go around. I'm not going to have a connection with everybody, right? My personality is only going to be a good fit for certain people too, right? So you got to focus on what is your strength, and then kind of double down on it, and then work that into all your relationships with the clients that you're looking to build the business with. And that's what I found work, because I found that in the past, I'd work with clients because I felt like I had to, and it was a struggle. And we would get business done and get deals done and stuff, but I wouldn't want to go back to the table where it was like, a strained relationship, or maybe it didn't feel like it was a win-win. It was definitely a more of a give on my side and a take on their side. Not even just necessarily financially, but emotionally draining sometimes with like a million questions. But then like, would I want to go back and go over and above and beyond for that person down the road? Maybe not, because I know that they continue to take and take and take. I'm able to be strategic now and work with people that I know have a great understanding of what we can both give and take. And like we said before, it's win-win, right?
Yep.
And if I'm not the right personality and that fit for them, then I usually can refer them to somebody who is.
Oh, no, that's actually good, because a lot of agents they're in the mindset that they just want to like keep their circle really close, and they're not willing to share. And oftentimes we notice that those type of solo agents, when the time gets difficult, they either burn out or there's just not enough connection because or collaboration with other agents. Yeah. Yes.
What you're saying, I think it stands really true on both ends, and it's something that both clients, let's just say investors for the sake of identifying one, and agents need to understand. They need to look at themselves and see what personality types they are. They need to see who they resonate and what type of, let's say, investor they are, because sometimes people, in terms of being able to offer value, the value you offer will be in line with what type of personality you are. Are you an aggressive person? Are you like always haggle the best possible deal? Or are you just like, hey, we can pay a little more here, get it done, and go momentum? So sometimes people are very speed focused and just save time over profits, and then other people are like, let's save the money, right? And these are values that people appreciate, and so you have to decide on where you are. So in this process, do you feel like realtors should understand what their clients need in terms of like, should a realtor be an investor if they are serving investor clients?
I think you have to be, because if you've never gone through it as an investor yourself, you don't understand what you need to, even what to put in the offer specifically. You might have a template that somebody's given you, but I can tell you from experience, even educating other realtors that on teams that I've helped build, or even on the admin side, if this is in the listing, you need to put this in there, but there might be one little thing that's different that requires you ask for something else, and they don't know it. And I'm like, how can a realtor that's never been an investor, who doesn't understand holistically what's at stake, know what to put on an offer? A good example is I just sold a house where the realtor brought me an offer, and I was like, there's nothing in here protecting her buyer. And I'm like, if it was me, I would have had this, and that, right? And just because they're a volume realtor, they've done a lot of business, doesn't mean they've done a diverse type of purchases, right? They might have only done single family homes. So they've never done maybe a duplex, or they've never done something with a long-term tenant, or they've never done anything that deals with landlord tenant board issues, right? There's being that investor focused gives you the ability to react and kind of pivot depending on what type of house you're buying or house you're selling.
Are there any clauses or conditions that you always kind of include in your offer when you're making an offer for your investor clients?
Right. So it really depends on whether it's vacant or whether it's tenanted. Vacant doesn't matter. Like the standard agreement of purchase and sale has vacant possession. It's just when you get to tenants that it becomes a little bit more, not necessarily complicated, but you need to be very specific to make sure you're protected. One of them is, are you assuming the tenants? If you are, we have a clause in there that gets a tenant acknowledgement that says, okay, the tenants tell you and sign off on it, what they're paying, what their rent is, how long they've been there, and then you get all their information. So you're not just getting the information from the other agent or from the seller. You have all the specific stuff into like, where does the last month's rent deposit go that the current landlord took? Maybe it was 5 years ago, right? You need to make sure that legally that's transferred over to you as well. Or if there's tenants and you want vacant possession, then you need to have specifics about, did they sign an N11, which is the landlord tenant board termination clause contract, say that they're going to be leaving as of this date. And then how do you protect yourself if they don't move out, right? So you would put a clause in that maybe says that if the tenants haven't moved out by such and such a date, then you can extend the closing for a period, all this to protect the buyer. Because I've seen it before, and you've probably read in news articles and headlines where property was sold, house was supposed to be vacant, person didn't move out, now there's a lawsuit. The buyer is now on the hook that they've inherited a property that has a tenant in there, they can't move in, and the buyer agent didn't protect them, so the buyer sues everybody, the buyer agent included, right? So not only do you want the clauses in there that are going to protect your client as a realtor, you want to protect yourself too.
Yeah, your reputation as well.
That one, that example you just gave, I think is a big one. There's always a lot of colorful situations that you see as a result of the fallout of that. Like I think one of the ones that on the selling agent perspective, to protect them, just so we can give tidbits out to people, we saw a situation where the selling agent was asked to serve the tenants with an N12 and ask for vacant possession. But the problem was that it was not explicitly written in the APS. Right? So the buying agent kind of told them verbally that this is what we want you to do. And then when the whole matter went to the LTB, they said that there's nothing explicitly stating that you need to do this. So you need to make sure that if the buyer is asking you as a seller to have it for vacant possession and wants you to serve it in 12, it has to be in writing. Otherwise, 100%. You have nothing to cover yourself. And then now it's arguable who's liable, right?
Right.
But yeah, all kinds of scenarios that people need to know. And sometimes I wonder, how does anyone know this unless you've experienced it or talked to somebody who's explicitly going to tell you this? 100%. There's so many ins and outs.
Yeah.
Right?
So I've made it a point to join a lot of different groups. So, I mean, there's a couple of WhatsApp investor groups, right, where people are asking questions. I'm stuck in this position. How do I get out of it? I've run into this problem. Landlord-tenant board questions all the time. I'm part of a bunch of different landlord groups, and then a bunch of different realtor groups where you see realtors who've gotten themselves into trouble and people who have the expertise and the knowledge to get them out of that trouble, or what should they have done differently. So I'm always trying to learn how to protect myself.
The continuous education is really, really important in real estate, because we're not going to get a deal that's identical like to the previous deals, right?
Always different.
It's always different. Yeah, exactly. So it's always good to kind of educate yourself. So James, we've seen you doing a lot of street tour. Right, and then actually I participated in a lot of tours back in I think 2017-ish.
2017,
yeah, 2017, and I thought it was very, very informative and valuable. Who started this idea?
Well, I can't take credit for it. I've been part of Rockstar for years, so I was a member back 2012 maybe. And then they started, and it makes perfect sense. So I was thinking about it leveraging my time as a realtor. If I can take one client out and show them 5 houses, or I can take 10 clients out and show them 5 houses, it saves me 9 other trips, right? And I can do the same educational walkthrough and teach people what it is that I look for in a house just when I walk through. And so I learned early on that I really just, as I'm walking through a house, people don't know what to look for. So I just started verbalizing what I'm seeing. So I'm looking down, I'm like, oh, I wonder what type of water line this is. Is it copper? Is it lead? Wondering what electrical we've got here. Let me check out the panel. Is it 60 amp? Is it 100 amp? All those things that I've just naturally learned to check on, but most people don't. And so if you just go through that whole process of educating people on what to look for, people also understand the value that you bring to the table, because it's not just opening a door and do you like the house or not, right? It's looking at all these pieces and then also bringing stuff like what would this rent for from an investor side? What type of tenants would you be potentially targeting? Specifically to duplex conversions, is kind of ceiling height. Do I need egress windows? Like the thousands of questions we've gotten from clients over the years. And by us working with some of the experts in planning, different companies, Andy Tran, Suite Additions, he's been a massive help at helping us understand and navigating all the different cities and what the requirements are. And we just educate our clients that way. And so that was the real point of the tour, is to get people out there seeing the houses, because I find sometimes it's overwhelming, the amount of information out there, until you get people into a house, show them what to look for and really break it down to the basics. And then it's not that difficult, right?
Right. The moment that you open the door, you're looking at the property. Actually, do you preview the property, the listing before?
Depends.
Okay.
So a lot of the times I'll just grab it where based on some basic factors. I look at lot size, square footage, number of bedrooms, setback from the sides. So sometimes I can tell within 5-10 seconds of research looking at the listing whether or not it has enough of the right criteria and go from there. But I don't usually do a deep dive.
So you pretty much just walk in as though it's your first time.
100%.
Or it's pretty much like your first time, and then you go in there, you just walk people through exactly what you're thinking, how you're visualizing with the property, how you can actually turn this into the best use of possible for this listing.
Yeah, I find that it's better that way, because if I go in, sometimes it's fine going in a second time, but the second time I've already seen it, I might skip something that
Got it.
I saw the first time, whereas in the first time I point everything out.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be scripted, and that's how you know you actually know what you're doing, is when you can kind of go in and just be like, okay, let me show you guys, this is what it is that I'm noticing, and you have confidence in yourself to do it. It's interesting. We were talking before about the importance of, realtors being able to coach their clients. You also now do coaching, and I think that's a byproduct of seeing the value in just educating your clients, right? If they need to see value in you, you should be able to anticipate their needs, even tell them what they need before they even know they need it,
100%.
because you're experienced, right? Especially for new investors, right? The worst thing I ever felt when I had an agent that I had to do was I felt like I had to help them do their job.
Right.
Why do I have it? I don't need a pencil pusher. I need somebody who's going to critically think, critically assess. And some things to me are a little bit too intuitive, right? And I feel that the realtor needs to be working hard. If they're going to work with somebody like us, they need to work hard to bridge that gap.
100%.
Right? So educate yourself, right?
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges I always found the realtors struggled with when we're working with different people in different cities is the comparable thing, right? I find that so many realtors don't understand what is an actual comparable to this, especially if we're flipping a house or we're doing whatever. It's like the comparables, I think so many people struggle with it. How do you approach that? Like, do you have any tips or secrets that you go to looking at things like that?
I think I've been in so many houses and I've seen, I got my license in 2014, I think. So I'm going on 9 years. But I look at the number of houses that I've been in, the number of houses that I've offered on and done analysis on and seen. So we actually keep through our admin team, every house that I see, we keep track of what it sells for, right? So I can go back and go, oh yeah, I was in that house 6 months ago and I have a spreadsheet of everything that it's sold for. So I can go back and track. I also have searches set up so that when a house sells, whether I've seen it or not, I see the sale price. And that gives us an ability to keep an eye on the market without having to actively go in, sit down and look at whatever MLS system you're on, whether it's Matrix, whether it's Treb, whatever, and see those sales every day. I get them on my phone wherever I am, right? So that's one way we kind of keep a pulse on the market. And when I'm doing my comparable market analysis, it's got to be like for like. So I've had agents before be like, well, this was only a 2-bedroom, but it sold for this. I'm like, but I'm selling a 3-bedroom. That's why it's valued at this. And they're like, well, it's only X number of dollars per bedroom. And I'm like, well, you can't look at it specifically like that because you've got a completely different market that's interested in a 2-bedroom house versus a 3-bedroom house. Or is the basement finished? What is the ceiling height like? So I've had people compare a fully finished basement that's 6 foot or 7 foot ceiling height with one that's kind of partially finished 5 foot. I'm like, no, you can never make the 5 foot ceiling height livable like you can the 7 foot height ceiling, right? So there's hundreds of thousands of dollars difference could be potentially in value based on that house, right? So you just need to make sure that, because I've seen other agents push over some other agents and they get them to believe that that's the right way because they don't understand the market enough.
You're the kind of guy who the fact that you even think about is because the MLS doesn't tell you the basement height.
Right.
Hopefully the listing agent will tell you, right? And the description, but they don't tell you that. So when you just see that it's a finished basement, it's not obvious always that this has a 5 foot high ceiling versus the 7 foot.
It depends on the city. If you're on the Hamilton Mountain and the bungalows typically have the same ceiling height, but you guys know Lower City Hamilton, it can be a gong show.
Yeah.
I've seen crawl spaces. I've seen 5 feet. I've seen 7 feet. I had one where the seller was actually a concrete guy and he had actually underpinned and dug down. It was one of the highest basements I've seen. I think it was 8 foot tall.
Yeah.
Right. So, but you just, from pictures, you can't tell. So we can be we've learned a lot of little tips and tricks too. If it's a block basement, you can kind of figure out based on how many blocks you see what the height is.
Yeah.
So
if you know it's 12-inch block, then
exactly.
you can always
so you can
count
tell
it.
from MLS pictures, but a lot of people won't do that.
Yeah.
Right. They don't do the deep dive analysis.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the 2023 strategy for you guys? Right, let's say I'm the investor. I want to invest in 2023 because right now the market came down about 20-25% depending on the area, and I feel like it's a good time to actually buy in. What would be the best strategy that you recommend to other people?
So what I'm telling people now is this is the time to be strategic. So if you rewind to 2021, 2022, investors getting into the market didn't have the luxury of wait for the perfect property, because every time the perfect property came up, another 40 people would jump on that property. So your likelihood of getting it was slim to none. Now we're in a position where, there's low inventory, but the buyers are almost non-existent. Except for certain types of properties. But now you can be strategic. So if your plan is to own these 15, 20 years, you're looking for something that, you mentioned highest and best use as well. So I may be buying single family today. on an extra wide lot that I can turn into a duplex for the main house and then do a garden suite or a laneway suite in the back because it has all the proper dimensions. That's where I'm telling people now you can be strategic on looking specifically for, you might not do the build today, you might do it 5 years down the road, but it means you have the option to do it, right? Versus having to sell that house and then find the right fit. So now is the time to be strategic, find those properties that will serve you for a long time.
Okay, so it's more like a development potential, right? You can save the land, you can like build like a garden suite laneway housing, all that stuff.
We're looking for a property that's going to give you options. Like, I don't think it makes sense right now to just, bury your head in the sand and look at, I just want single family houses. Sure, you could still buy those. You might be cash flow negative for now, or if you did a rent to own, they might work positively. Yeah. But why when there's so many other choices, right?
Yeah, this is why I think education and coaching is actually really important for 2023, because it's not, people would learn these strategies like the BRRRR method, the flip house method, the flipping the house, or being able to do like rent to own programs, whatever. Like, and they would just say, okay, this is a strategy I learned, this is what I'm employing. And in a healthy market, it works. But now this is a market where you actually need to think and you need to tailor an approach to a property, right? And like you said, right now, what is it? They did the thing where they're making it easier for triplex now, right? Or 3-unit recognition, which allows now a little more leeway for those duplexes to add that garland suite, right? So which is exactly what you said, right? And a lot of people just aren't aware of these things yet, right? But also because it's relatively new, people don't know what the process is going to be like, so you have to stay on top of it, right?
Yeah. So the way I've been thinking it is like, there's always going to be bleeding edge people that are doing it first. I don't really want to be that person because those people are going to make all the mistakes. They're going to figure it out, navigate the difficult process. And I want them to come back to us, teach us what they did wrong, what they would do differently, and we can learn from that. And then we do it the right way the first time.
Do better, yeah.
Right? It just makes so much more sense. But those people still need to do it, and that's fine. I'll let them be first. But buy those properties that will give you the ability to do all that stuff down the road.
Can you just walk me through like 3, maybe 5 different things that you will look at when you're looking for a property with a development potential?
Sure. So, development could mean multiple things, whether it can be, like you said, severing a lot or doing a build down the road. Our team personally, we have assisted clients with buying properties that ended up severing the back of the lot and building on the back, but not too many of them. The bread and butter and what we're finding most people are doing is taking a single family home. You need to make sure that it's a decent square footage, because I personally don't like the 2-bedroom main floors. I find it limits your potential down the road. First glance on paper, they look good because they're cheaper. And I know a lot of investors have done well with them, but I find you have just much more flexibility and you have a much wider tenant pool when you're looking at least 1,000 square feet on the main floor. If you're looking at a bungalow, I'm looking at lot setback. So how far. A good example, I saw a house on the Hamilton Mountain last week. It looked like it had a fantastic lot. It was like 160 feet deep. Problem was the house was set back like 100 feet almost. So there's no backyard. I didn't look at it quick. I just saw the quick numbers and booked it and went that same afternoon. Got there and I'm like, oh, it's all frontage. So really limited. You can't do anything else with the house. So making sure the house is properly positioned on the lot, which gives you flexibility to do whatever you want in the back. Because we're finding there's 2 options right now for adding those extra units. So once you've duplexed the main house, so I'm going to speak specifically to Hamilton right now, you can do the garden suite, which gives you 3. Right now, that's a separate detached unit in the back, got separate yard separation, all that stuff. That's fine and good. We found that there's a loophole that if you do an addition, even if it's attached by like say a breezeway, which is like an occupied space, and as long as it's connected to the main house, you can excavate the basement. So now your 2 units turn into 4. So you can make the back garden suite 2-story with a basement. And so instead of your 3-unit limitation, now you've got 4. So now you've got a 4-plex on the same lot.
Okay, write that down.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a lot of creativity put into one deal.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. So when you're saying that it has to be connected even if it's by a breezeway, just so that people are listening, when you say a breezeway, what do you mean?
So good example is when you've got 2 separate living spaces with unoccupied, unheated space in the middle. So there's a roof over it. It's enclosed, but it's almost like a hallway.
Yeah, and it's in like it's technically open to the elements.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it could be closed by windows, but it's not often walled in and framed and insulated. So it's usually uninsulated with glass space.
Okay, that's actually good. So technically, that's more just decorative to comply with building code.
Or a good example is one of my properties has it's a sunroom off the back of the house where the entrance is to the basement unit. So I've turned the main house into a duplex. Yeah. But I'm like, I was going to do a garden suite on that lot, but I'm like, I've already got this sunroom that's got a concrete pad. I can just build the addition off the other side of it. You walk into the sunroom, the door to the basement's on one side and the door to the now new addition is on the other.
The sunroom's common entrance.
Correct.
That's brilliant.
Right. And what's the setback between the side of the lot and the back of the lot?
It's usually 4 feet off of the side. Setback from the back of the lot has to be about 25 feet. If you're doing the garden suite, it has to be 25 feet from the house to the garden suite.
How about the parking restriction on that?
Parking's now new. So if you're doing that 4-unit strategy, it gets a little bit more complicated because I don't know even if it's been determined how many parking spaces you need. When it comes down to the duplex and the garden suite, you actually only need 2 spaces, I believe.
2 spaces. And that's like side-by-side parking.
Correct.
In Hamilton,
Yeah.
I hate that.
No. But you know what? That's actually good because technically speaking, when you're building this, you don't have to figure everything out immediately in the front, right? Because you can kind of do the 2 units plus a third and leave the provision for the 4th. And then when you're able to do it, because it might take longer to do the 4 units. I think with the 4 units, you still have to ask the community. You still have to do the community notice for 4 units,
minor
right?
variance.
Is it for 4 units?
I
or
don't
is it
know
just
if you
3?
need. I don't know if you need a variance yet. I don't think it's by right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know
so,
that the 3 units for sure is by right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. So it was before just the 2 units. Now it's the 3. I know they
Yeah.
did that one for sure. I'm not 100% sure about the 4 unit because it's not as common that people will be doing this type of thing,
No.
right? But it's nice to have it there as the potential because a lot of times in real estate we always sell potential, right? There's
Yeah.
always you grow into it rather than you just buying it as it is, right?
And we're seeing it all change too. Like, so you mentioned parking. If you rewind, summer of 2022, Hamilton quietly got rid of all the parking requirements for a second unit on a duplex. So prior to that, we needed to make sure we had 18 feet wide. One of the parking spaces had to be away from the house. One could be in front of the house. So you had 2 spaces for maneuverability. They got rid of that, right? So now
It was quiet.
if it had a single car driveway, you could just leave that there and do tandem parking.
Wow,
Right?
that's
So that
good,
saved investors. A lot of investors had to spend, $6 to $10,000 to widen the driveway, repave it all, and that requirement went away. So we're seeing this evolution of the city bylaws and standards where they're trying to make it more easy for investors to create these extra units because they know there's a lack of affordable housing.
When did this get implemented?
Summer 2022.
So summer 2022.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because a lot of people were running against those problems when it came to the tree blocking the side by side, especially when it's a city tree.
Exactly.
Right.
We had one property that we ended up selling. It was actually before the summer 2022, but there was a tree that's blocking the way. It's a dying tree.
Right.
During the summer, there's no leaves, and then the city is not willing to actually cut it.
No.
So and then because that's in the way for us to widen the driveway, which prevents us from getting the permits for the basement, we had to end up selling it.
Without the duplex process, just because it was taking too long, the cost of it.
Well, and I think about the number of houses we had to pass on because of that exactly, right? So leading up to 2022, we couldn't, investors just weren't buying. It could be a perfect house, perfect lot, perfect everything else, but there's a tree in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't do parking, so we would pass on it. Now we can go back and revisit all those properties, and they become viable solutions for investors.
So we're obviously seeing a lot of things that are valuable that and so if I'm an investor, I would want somebody like you to be representing my interest because you know how to do this. You can pretty much do the whole job that I'm looking to do, right? If you're put in that position. But so we know what an investor should look for because this is all very great information. I mean, you're going to operate as a realtor and you know this stuff to tell me? That's amazing. How does any other realtor compete then? How does somebody go and learn this stuff, right?
I think as a realtor, if you don't know, you need to just join networking groups. So there's so many, every city has its own group of investors.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I go back to before I used to be part of RAIN, the Real Estate Investment Network.
Yeah.
So there's all these different education groups, and some of them are free and some of them are just meetups where you just got to talk to people who know all the different rules and regulations, right? To educate yourself. I've represented realtors that don't understand the secondary home market because maybe they've only ever done new construction or they've only ever done condos. They're like, I want to invest in it and buy a duplex, but I don't know anything about it. I've never written a contract because it's all been builder contracts, right? And so I've helped them out for their first 2, 3, 4 properties until they understand and then they kind of figure it out for themselves.
I think the biggest advantage is that you also invest into what you're selling to.
Well, and
you practice what you preach.
Yeah.
So I do that with everything. I find that if I'm going to be from an ethical standpoint, I want to make sure that I've done it. So I understand it can be done first. I do that with my trades as well. So if I'm going to recommend an electrician or a plumber or a handyman, I've used them first to test them out. And if they meet my requirements, then I'll recommend them. And that relationship doesn't always last forever too. Like we've had some great contractors, some great electricians that all of a sudden their service levels plummet, and then so we can't recommend them anymore, right? So it's ever evolving, but it's always been, we test them out first.
So you broke them with volume.
Yeah,
That's what happened.
Always.
Yeah, no, that's
What's
always the thing.
what's the Tim Ferriss thing? The hug of death.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You promote somebody to the point where they just break their business because they can't.
Yeah,
scale.
and then when you tell them that that's what you're going to do, they're just like, yeah, okay, bring it on. And then they wish they didn't ask. You've now also taken the expertise and the experiences you have, and you're also coaching people, right? You coach investors, and who do you coach primarily? Investors, realtors?
We call ourselves coaches as well as because we're realtors, but at the end, it's not a separate service, right? It's packaged into the realtor service. So if you come to me and say, James, I want to be a real estate investor, but I don't know what I'm doing, then the coaching is to get you from point A to point B, as well as buying the house. I'm also educating you along the way, or pointing you in the right direction of, okay, you should take this course, or you should attend these seminars, or you should do this session to kind of further your investment knowledge. And everybody's going to be a bit different. Sometimes I meet with some people that I want coaching, and I'm like, okay, well, tell me a bit about your background. And they've done way more than I have. And I'm like, well, I can coach you, but you have more experience than I do in X, Y, and Z. And so I'm probably not the right fit. So our niche is going to be the newer investor that's looking to just get in and kind of build up their expertise and then kind of go from there. And for most people, there's not a lot of investors. I have people come to me, I want to buy 15 houses. Okay, I can get you there, but you need to understand that it's not what you think it is, right? So, because a lot of people are like, I'm just going to go and get 30 joint ventures. Okay, tell me how you're going to go through that. And I can teach people strategically, like, take this joint venture course, understand it, but then they go and try and practice it, and it's very different in reality from what they thought it was, right?
Yeah, well, it's because people are buying these dreams of like, because that's the nature of that type of industry, right?
You want to bring them back to reality first, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'm never one to say if that is your goal, I will support you and help you get there. But just make sure you understand you're going to need to do this to get there. And most people start off gung-ho and they're ready to go. Some people do that and they blow it out of the water. And others, once they start realizing how much of a grind it is, they back up.
Okay, you have a very deep understanding of it. You can tell that you kind of understand people. Some people are just cut out for it, and other people, they have a longer journey ahead of them in order to get to that point where they're able.
So how do you usually manage your time? Because at some point, especially I think back in like 2017, 2018, that your production volume is extremely high.
It was, yes.
Right, and so you're facilitating all the deals, and then you're also coaching your clients about all the real estate knowledges and all that stuff. How do you balance them all?
So I learned very early, I'm trying to remember who taught me. It might have been the guys at Rockstar, but they're like, if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. And so I think within the first, it was probably my second year, I hired an admin full time. At the time, I didn't have enough work to keep them full time. So I think she was only doing like 20 hours a week. That quickly ramped up to a full-time job. And so I've managed to keep a full-time assistant since 2016.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So you don't deal with much of paperwork, you just do a review and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously my eyes are on every piece of paper and I take a look at it to make sure that everything's correct and then pass it over to them. But they're doing all the back-end stuff. They're working with the office to make sure that if there's any documents that are missed or dealing with all the lawyers, stuff like that. I always look at it, so where's my expertise and where should my focus be? And that's on educating investors and finding great properties for them. And so that's where I spend all my time.
I gotta ask you this question. It's probably not easy to find this person, right? Because one, this person needs to be on top of everything, needs to be very organized, and also they need to be willing to, or he or she needs to be willing to work, let's say in the evening or over the weekend. How long did that take you to actually find this person?
I was really lucky. So Tammy, who's my partner, and she's a realtor as well and a coach at Rockstar, she had just gotten to a point when I first started that she was looking for something different to do. And so she came on as my full-time admin.
First person,
right?
Wow.
And so then she turned into, from one of the best realtors out there from an investment side, she's known as the duplex queen, right? Because she has, I mean, I have a really good understanding of the whole process, but she knows everything. And so from there, she got her real estate license. And then I was like, okay, I need somebody new. I ended up hiring just on Indeed. And luckily enough, I found somebody. There was probably 4 or 5 different candidates. The first 2 that I was going to hire. I'm glad we didn't. Hired her, and then she was great. And funny enough, she ended up getting her real estate license, and then so she left to do that full time. And then my current admin, she's been fantastic as well. I've just been really lucky.
Yeah.
So she was managing a small business and was looking for more flexibility because she had to be in the office 9 to 5, and she had older children, so she didn't worry about working in the evenings or on weekends.
Remote, yeah.
And she loved the fact that she could just do it from home.
Yeah, no, that's hugely advantageous.
So yeah, so we have we talk every day through, whether it's through WhatsApp, whether it's through Messenger or emails, and then we have structured weekly meetings where we go through all the upcoming listings, all the upcoming buyers. What are my clients looking for? She's also strategically picking some properties as well, if just in case I miss something. She's booking all my showings. She does everything.
That's a lot of heavy lifting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of heavy lifting.
So James, what is your outlook on the current economy, like 2023, 2024? How do you think the market is going to shift?
So I, like you guys, I don't have a crystal ball. So it's a tough question, but I'm not an expert. I'm really good at getting information from other people and amalgamating it all and curating it to figure out what do I think is going to happen. Looking at where things have trended. We had a webinar on Tuesday. We had Dan Patton from BM Select. If you guys are looking for a mortgage broker, definitely reach out to him. But so looking at his outlook, because they're one of the highest volume brokerages in Canada, where we're seeing CPI, so inflation trending, we've already started to see the high interest rates have started to push that down. It's a bit of I'm no economist, so I'm kind of paraphrasing on what I understand. It's a lagging indicator, so we should see a continued downward trend for the next 6 months because the numbers we're seeing now are reflective of the interest rates 6 months ago. So it's going to take a while for inflation to come down before we see any rates decrease. I don't see rates decreasing based on that until probably late 2023, if at all, until early 2024. That being said, I think that the general public is probably going to see, if we see consistently rates being held, their sentiment is going to become more and more positive. So we'll see more buyers come back into the market. We've already seen prices starting to creep up over the last couple of months. A lot of that has to do with low volume too, but there's still great buying opportunities. So if, as an investor, I think now is a great time to look for those deals, being strategic, like I mentioned before, because I do see that we're probably going to have a pretty decent recovery. The job market's held really, really strong. All things considered, everyone said we're going to go into a recession, but jobs have been really good as well. So it's a bit of a conundrum. But if we have what we're calling a soft landing in terms of the economy, where people keep their jobs, inflations go down, rates are bound to come down as well.
Yeah. Adrian and I have a philosophy in investment. We always want to kind of do things that's opposite of what everybody else 100%. Is doing. So when everybody's right now is like being a little fearful with getting into the market, right? If we see that there's some indicator that the recovery is going to be strong, we actually want to be in there ASAP, right? Mm-hmm. And then as long as the investing strategy allows us to hold, like holding being an option, then we can comfortable getting into the market right now. Because again, 25% down, that's what we've been asking for in the past 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the thing, is that everybody right now is afraid, and you're right, the buyers aren't there. But this is where one of the things we're also telling people is that this is a buyer's market means you have haggling power.
Yeah.
And that's what sometimes people are like not always too confident in doing. Like our strategy, for example, this year, you tell me what you think about it, is our strategy this year is that when we make offers, we should be a little embarrassed of the offer, right? Because it's hard. The buyers are in control, and there's few of them, right? So there's more product out there. So it just depends on who it is that you are.
And you never know who the seller is, right? So a good example, there was a house listed 570, and I talked to my client, and we're like, let's just throw in a low ball at 500. And normally, if you rewind it, I'd be like, no, it's a waste of time. In this case, that buyer was like, no, I'll wait. And then their neighbor sold for like 560. So they were valid in waiting, though they still haven't sold yet. So we're going to go back to them. But on the flip side, I've seen where they've taken that low ball offer because they were stuck, they've over leveraged, they were borrowing private money at 12%, 15% interest, and they just needed to get out because they had probably purchased, at peak of market, did some renovations and looking to get out. And I've seen that kind of a few times here and there. So that's where some of those deals can be had. But you're right, being embarrassed by some of those offers, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And don't make assumption for other people.
Yeah.
Right.
You might be offering them a solution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so listen, James, obviously you have a lot of value to contribute to people. You have a lot of insights, a lot of knowledge, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this will want to be able to get in touch with you. So if somebody wanted to connect with you for services or information or any other thing, how is the best way for them to connect with you?
Sure. Easiest is just to email me, james@rockstarbrokerage.com, or you can look me up on the Rockstar. Just Google Rockstar and my name will come up. I'm sure I'm on probably a million websites by now. And then it's from there. It's we can easily connect and set up a meeting and go through. I actually just had one this afternoon. Somebody reached out to me on Instagram. They had been following me for a while, and we had a conversation. They're looking to get into investing. They were originally going to start in the fall, and now they're realizing they've started to see the market kind of stabilize as well. And they're like, I think now is probably a better time. And I'm like, okay, let's figure out what are your goals, and let's figure out how you can get there.
And definitely follow you on Friday.
Yes.
It's a fun find.
Yeah. I'm on Instagram too. I think JE Mags on Instagram, and I do a weekly video every Friday. I usually check out houses, and again, like I mentioned, I just walk through the house and verbalize what it is that I'm seeing to try and educate people, because a lot of people don't know it. A lot of realtors included.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. So anybody wants to follow, check them out.